For folks who don't understand like how that even materialized in the first place, you have sort of an insider view on who Meghan Markle is. And the reason that she's relevant is for two reasons. One, because she really will not just leave and take the privacy she so desperately apparently wants, and she just won't take it. That's one reason. The other is that she is sort of emblematic of both a woke generation and an attention-seeking generation. She is kind of the TikTok generation, but kind of morphed into one human being. And so when people look at her, there's some people in the United States still who are kind of warm to her claims of victimhood and this idea that she's being very emotionally open. And there are other people looking at her and like, this is the most bratty person I've ever seen in my entire life. But you have some actual personal experiences that led up to
I knew her a bit before she met Harry, and she seemed perfectly normal, albeit like most LA actresses I'd met, but she seemed fine, perfectly normal. And there was a weird series of events. One was the wedding, where she suddenly fell out spectacularly with her father, who we now know had brought her up on his own for quite a few years, actually. And she sort of disowned him, and that all seemed a bit sort of brutal and weird because he was just a guy out of his depth, couldn't handle the media, he was being bothered by paparazzi. Eventually did a deal with one of them where he would pose for good pictures of himself, and that was it. So that was all going on. And we were thinking, well, hang on, this is a bit weird. And then in the months and months after the wedding, you suddenly saw the pair of them morph from a beloved couple. I mean, they were. When they got married, it was a huge celebration in the UK. £32 million worth of taxpayer money was spent, and nobody begrudged them. She was the first biracial bride in the royal family. That was a big moment for a very multicultural country like the UK. And all the headlines were pretty euphoric, actually, contrary to the narrative they're now trying to make people in America think about what was happening. But then over the next few months, just a series of, well, you could call them missteps, or you could call them classic examples of brazen woke hypocrisy. Two people wanting to position themselves, for example, as eco-warriors. We want you to all watch your carbon footprint. They would say this in speeches. And then they'd catch Elton John's private plane like a taxi service. Or she would preach about poverty in a tweet from their royal Twitter account on the same day she had a $500,000 baby shower in New York, here, with a bunch of celebrities, and flew back on Amal Clooney's plane. And so this went on, and it was one after another. And because of the hypocrisy element, the British media in particular were very critical, very scathing, saying, hang on a second, you don't get all the palaces and the servants and the privileged life for this, right? You have to toe the line. You have to do the job, which involves often quite dreary duty as a member of the royal family, but you get to be one of the biggest stars in the world on the global stage in return. She, in particular, didn't seem to understand this. She thought that actually being a member of the royal family was wearing a tiara, getting a fabulous wedding, and then doing what the hell you like. So they began to just do a load of stuff which annoyed people, and they got the criticism, in my estimation, they thoroughly deserved. And at that point, they developed this victim narrative, that they were terrible victims of this brutal, racist British media and the horrible British people who were all turning on them for no reason. But it really wasn't like that. And so over time, Harry's inbuilt hatred of the media, which goes back to when his mother died, and I knew his mother very well, that all began to blow up again, as did his resentment of his family and the fact that William, his older brother, is the heir to the throne and he isn't. So William will be king, Harry won't. And then you put it all together and then you get Megxit, where they leave the country, they leave the royal family, and they wanted to have their royal cake and eat it. They wanted to stay half in, half out, do the good stuff, get all the trinkets, make all the money out of it, but not have to do any of the duty. And that was where you get to the place of the kind of chasm between them as a royal renegade family and the monarchy and the British royal family left behind. And now you have them doing a Netflix series about their life, incredibly self-intrusive, the most gossipy royal book that's ever been published, including accounts of Harry's conversations with his father and his brother at Prince Philip's funeral service. I mean, quite extraordinary. And you just see a pair of people earning a ton of money purely by trading off trashing their family and trashing the institution of the monarchy, which afforded them their royal titles, which make them the money. And to your point in the question, they've come to kind of encapsulate that mentality of the woke brigade, this sense of entitlement, self-righteousness, we're right, you're wrong, we don't have to play by our own rules, only you have to. And it's all pretty grubby and tawdry, and they've now ended up as a South Park, mockathon, which has got us all rolling in the aisles and probably reflects where they've now got themselves, which is they're a global laughingstock.
So one of the things that Prince Harry has been hanging his hat on in terms of his critique has been, as you mentioned, the media. And for Americans who don't follow the media over in Britain, I'm one of them. I didn't spend a lot of time with the British media, as evident from my obviously amazing interview with Andrew Neil, where I had no clue who he was. Why don't you introduce us to sort of the British media scene? Because it is a very rough and tumble place in a way that I don't think that the American media is quite the same kind of beast.
I'm not so sure. I think what's different about America is you don't have the volume of national newspapers all concentrated in quite a small geographic space. So, you can drive through Texas in the time it would take you to drive from one end of the UK to the other, and you still have time to spare. So to put the size perspective out there, that's the difference. So you have state newspapers, you have city newspapers, town newspapers. You've got a few national papers, but not as many. We have like 12, 13 national newspapers all scrapping for the same 60-odd million inhabitants of the United Kingdom. So it's a bit more intense, I would say, is the main difference. I think when it comes to the royals, the media are the royals' best friend and their toughest critics. We're their best friend collectively because without the media oxygen, this royal family and monarchy would go the same way of most other European monarchies. They would just disappear into oblivion. They need the support of the people. The people's support is reflected through the media. It's a connection between the three things: the public, and the royal family and the media, and all three basically fuel each other. So I felt that Harry's view of the media was completely clouded by the death of his mother. I completely understand that. I've always said that. His mother was killed by a drunk driver in a French tunnel, not by the paparazzi, who were more than 1,000 yards behind them when it happened. They didn't cause the accident. But his mother was constantly pursued by the paparazzi, and he saw this, and he blames the paparazzi for killing his mother, and therefore he blames the media, even though they weren't British paparazzi, actually. So he has this fixated hatred of the British media. Everything is the media's fault. And when you watch the interviews he gave with his book, it was almost comical. When they both went on Oprah Winfrey and accused the royal family directly of being racist. We all saw them do it. They basically said a member of the royal family expressed concern about the skin color of their baby. That's an allegation of racism, inarguably. And yet, 2 years later, Harry promoting his book, he didn't put it in the book, this incredible revelation, which caused so much damage. And he then says, well, we didn't say they were racist. It was the media, British tabloids. Completely deluded. Obviously, it was from him and his wife on global television. So there's a delusion there. I think he's not the brightest bulb in the tulip patch, Harry, to put it politely. I think she is very manipulative. Meghan Markle is someone who's basically got rid of almost her entire family on her side, apart from her mother, her entire family on the father's side, including her father, which is incredibly sad. And now she's wrestled Harry away from his family. So how happy they really are in this mansion in California when they have no connection now with any of their family, bar one or two people, I find it very hard to believe that makes anybody happy. So it's at one level it's sad. Another level, it makes me quite angry, the damage they've caused to the monarchy. I think most British people are sick and tired of them. The polling has them now below Prince Andrew, which I didn't think would be humanly possible. So, it's a mess. And you've got the coronation coming. It should be an enormous moment in British history because we haven't had a coronation in my lifetime. The Queen, of course, reigned for over 70 years. So it should be a moment of great celebration, but what's going to happen if these two are there with their Netflix cameras in tow? It's going to be just another part of the Meghan and Harry circus. So a lot of anger back home about this. Interesting to be in America again and feel the reaction to the South Park mockumentary